DND number 8, June Flower, in Jesus' name, Chapter 9. It wasn't the sun that woke him, even though it was up. It wasn't his growling stomach or even the cool air that moved over his body due to the covers having been pulled away. He kept his eyes closed, experiencing every second to its fullest. Jeffy, like earlier in the middle of the night, had her soft hands on his chest. His heart beat faster as he felt her lips brush against him, and he couldn't hold back the soft moan in the back of his throat. His thoughts, when she convinced him to stay in her room with her, had been innocent. At the moment, they were not so innocent. Sighing, he rose up, pushed her away, and headed to the bathroom, smiling at her disappointed whine. When he came back, he was freshly showered and dressed, and he sat down on the side of the bed and leaned over and kissed her. "Good morning, sweetheart." Jeffy smiled. "Good morning. How do you feel?" "Hungry, famished, and starved." He laughed. "You always did have a good appetite." "I think I'll go make some breakfast." "That sounds good." "And then, well, I really need to do some work on the computer, though I feel more inclined to lure you back to bed." "Intriguing and tempting," Cam quipped. "Intriguing because I'm pretty sure that because of what you confessed the other night about how you lost your virginity, you probably try very hard to not repeat your mistakes because I know you love God and always want to do His will. So I'm not sure why you'd want to lure me back to bed." "Tempting because, well, I mean, you are Jeffy Kino. But no can do. I have some preparations to make and some business to take care of." "You're leaving?" she asked. Sorry. "Yes, but not without you. I can't leave you here alone, and I need to check out the town and all possible escape routes." "I thought that's what you and John were discussing." "We were, but things can change, and I can't take any chances." "Okay, so we're going on a field trip. That's cool." He smiled. "So how about that breakfast?" "Right away, sir." His eyes followed her as she left the room. Cam shook his head. He will never get enough of looking at her. Jeffy's tight, athletic little body was an amazing sight, a specimen to be admired. Add that to her super brain, goodness, and many talents. She was unreal, a super being, Wonder Woman, a bright light in this very dark world. How could anyone even consider trying to put out her light? And for what? For money. Greed. He wiped his mind of the negative thoughts. Right now, he was happy. Jeffy accepted his love, accepted him back into her life, and admitted that she still loves him. And at this moment, he thought with a smile, all is right with the world. New scene. This is 1 week later at the Tanner home in Pine Forest, Georgia. Elizabeth Tanner, known to most as Lizzie, paced back and forth from the far side of her giant kitchen, where the kitchen table was, past the island to the side door that opened onto a delightful side yard. That little area used to be the children's play yard and was now a decadent flower garden, or would be in about a month, it being March. All that bloomed right now were some cheerful daffodils and crocuses and early hyacinths. Today, though, Lizzie's thoughts were far from flowers. She was terrified. She had to talk to her husband. She had to tell him how she felt and why she felt that way. More importantly, it had to be tonight. Her hands wrung in anticipation, and the feeling in the pit of her stomach had her clutching her abdomen. She had very little time to speak to him. He'd gone into the office today, even though it was Sunday, because he was leaving for California in the morning, and he had to sew up some details and leave the Southeast Division of Ameritech in the good hands of his second-in-command. From California, Keegan would be off to some place overseas near Russia on a special mission. All week long, Lizzie had tried to find the time and the courage to speak to her husband, but she'd run out of time. She had to talk to him today, and over the past few hours, she'd worked herself into a frenzy. Then Mattie Lewis had called, insisting that she had to make an announcement to everyone and that they all must come to dinner at the inn at 7. Lizzie tried to beg off, but Mattie was 80-something years old, and when she insists, pretty much everyone obeys. Besides, Mattie and Mattie's granddaughter Lisa had been so good to her and to Keegan and their 6 children. Right now, 3 of those children were off at college, one in Tennessee, one in Florida, and one in New York. The other 2 college-age girls attended nearby Gordon College, and today, though, they'd been visiting a friend's mother who was ill, but were due home any minute. Her youngest child, 14-year-old Gabriel, had run over to the Stewart Ranch to help Lena with the horses because Uncle Chaz had to go help a family who'd had an electrical fire in their home. Lizzie glanced at the clock. It was already a little after 6. Chewing on her lips, she gazed out the kitchen window that was at the front of the house. She drew a deep breath when she finally saw Keegan's car racing up the drive. She took a few steps backward until she hit the island. Her heart beat fast and hard. She watched the garage door raise, watched him pull in, heard the garage door lower, heard him open the mudroom/laundry room door. She moved to the center of the kitchen. Keegan came through the laundry room, turned right, and entered the kitchen. His brow was furrowed, and he was obviously preoccupied. His eyes met Lizzie's, and he stopped and pasted a smile on his face. "Hi there, Lizbeth." She ran to him, landed solidly against his chest. His arms immediately came around her. "Oh, well, now this is nice," he said, trying to keep the mood light. "Do I get a kiss, too?" Lizzie raised her face, and he bent down and kissed her mouth. He had intended a light, sweet kiss, but Lizzie's desperation came through, and she opened herself to him completely, and Keegan took what she offered, deepening the kiss until he couldn't suppress the moan. He tried to pull away a second to catch his breath, but she wouldn't let him. Next thing he knew, he was lifting her up into his arms. She wrapped her legs around his waist, and somewhere in the back of their minds, they heard the front door open. "Hey, Dad, what's the—" Lily stopped. Keegan immediately placed Lizzie back on the floor, and Lizzie spun around, her cheeks pink. "Oh, hi, girls," she said breathlessly, smoothing her hair. Lily's twin, Daisy, grinned from ear to ear. "Well, now, I guess we have pretty bad timing." "Or they do," Lily offered. "Hello, my sweet angels," Keegan said. "Have I told you lately how much I love you and how grateful I am to be your father?" They giggled. Not because what he said was funny, but because he said it all the time. It was his normal greeting. They, too, were grateful. They'd never known their own father, and Keegan was all they knew, and they were grateful for the love and care he gave to them, to their sisters, and to their mom. The girls moved through the kitchen, each grabbing glasses of milk and a handful of cookies. We'll be in our room," Lily said. "With the door closed," Daisy added as Lily giggled. Keegan watched them leave and then smiled down at his wife, expecting to see her ready to take up where they'd left off. But she wasn't smiling. Instead, tears welled in her eyes. "Lizzie," Keegan said softly, pulling her against his chest. "What is it, sweetheart?" She pulled away and walked to the entrance to the front hall, turned and walked halfway back and drew a deep breath. "You can't go," she blurted out. His brows rose. He hadn't expected her to say that. Whatever reason she had for saying it, he had a feeling this was about to be a difficult conversation. He waited, thinking she probably had much more to say, and he was right. "I said you can't go. You can't leave tomorrow. You can't go to California, and you certainly can't go to this Kazakhstan place. I won't allow it, and that's final." He moved softly and slowly. "Sweetheart, you know it's part of my job. You know I have to go." She shook her head. "I know nothing of the sort. I won't be gone long. It's just for a few days, a week at the longest." "You can't go, Keegan. You can't go," she said, the tears spilling over her cheek. His brow furrowed as he tried to understand what his wife was saying, and more importantly, why she was saying it. "Lizzie, it's not like it's the first time I've been called away. I've had plenty of missions where I had to be gone for a while, and you've never had a problem before. From the beginning, you told me my job wouldn't bother you. Remember all those years ago when we first got together and you told me you understood what my job entailed and you would have no problems with it. You had been the wife of a soldier and you understood what that means. Remember, you said it wouldn't bother you. Yes, I remember, but it's bothering me now, and you can't go, Keegan. Find someone else. Someone else? Come on, sweetheart. You're kidding, right? The men who are coming on this mission, I trained them. I have to be there with them. Will you get Braden or one of your other Afghanistan buddies to go? Braden is going, and so is Caleb and Tristan and Joey and Jeff and several other elite. Well, then they won't miss you. His brows shot up and he shook his head. Well, now, thanks for diminishing my importance. She threw her hands up. I'm sorry, but I'm desperate and I can't let you go. Lizzie, you know Jeffy Keno is in danger. You know if it was one of our children, all the others would come forward and do whatever it would take to help bring them home. And I have to do whatever I can to help. I'm surprised that you don't want me to because I know how much you love Jeffy. Lizzie's face crumpled. Lisbeth, come here, he said, holding his hand out to her. She came slowly to him. He took her hand and led her to the living room and sank down into his favorite chair and pulled her into his lap. Now, tell me what this is really all about. Why do you say I can't go? She sniffed and looked him in the eye and tried to put her fears into words. Drawing a deep breath, she began at the beginning. Back when I was married to Bradley after Heather was born and Bradley went away to Iraq, remember I told you I found out I was pregnant with Rose and Violet? Yes, of course I remember. Well, Bradley, he was away when they were born. He didn't even see them until they were several months old, and then I got pregnant with Daisy and Lily, and Bradley was killed before I had them. And once again I had to give birth without the man I love at my side. Okay, he said slowly. And then you came into my life, and I got pregnant with Gabriel, and you had to go rescue Lily while I was giving birth. His brow furrowed, and he nodded. Yeah, that was a scary time. I don't want you to go away, Keegan. What if something happens to you? He shook his head. I can't go on a mission with those thoughts in my head. I'm not afraid, and I don't want you to be afraid either. But I am afraid. Don't you see? I'm afraid because She stopped, and he waited, but when she went no further, he prompted her on. What are you trying to tell me? What are you saying, Lizzie? She blinked up at him, nodding her head, and the light went on. Are you telling me you're pregnant? She bit her lip and nodded. He couldn't contain his smile. Elizabeth, you're going to have a baby? He frowned then. But how? She shrugged. I don't know. I guess we weren't as careful as we thought. Well, how far along? How are you feeling? 8 weeks, and I'm not feeling too bad. They sat in silence for a minute. Lizzie, are you upset about being pregnant? Is that what this is all about? He finally asked. Are you kidding me? Of course not. Besides, what's the alternative? End the pregnancy? I would never do that. It's not something I would even consider ending a baby's life. How can anybody ever think that killing a child is the answer to anything? Exactly, he agreed, wary of which way to take the conversation. Lizzie went on, I'm only 39, and I'd love to have another child. What I don't want, Keegan, is to have this child alone. I want you by my side. I need you by my side. He was beginning to understand and knew he needed to tread softly. Sweetheart, I'll be back in about a week. That's not so long. She sniffed as the tears came again. What if you aren't? What if you don't make it back? I can't go away with those thoughts in my head, Elizabeth, he said firmly. I know that, but I'm afraid, Keegan. Bradley said he'd be back too. I have really bad luck when it comes to having babies, and I'm afraid you won't come back. Oh, hon, he said, holding her close and stroking her back. I promise to be careful. I promise to not take any chances. Surely you understand that I couldn't live with myself if I didn't go and something happened to Tristan or Joey or anyone else because I wasn't there. Tell me you understand that. I do understand. In my head. My heart is screaming, though, for you to stay here with me, safe and sound. She wiped her tears. Look, I know you have to go, Keegan. I know I shouldn't have even asked you to stay. I shouldn't put any more pressure on you than you already have. And I know you need to focus on the job at hand and not be distracted. So go, Keegan. Fight hard and strong and come back to me. He held her tight. I will, I promise. They sat nestled together for several minutes. Keegan, I have to make a request. What's that? Let me come to California with you. It's spring break. Gabe and the girls can come along. We can visit with the Kinos, and I'll try to help in any way I can. Keegan thought a minute. Well, Shelley Kino could probably use a distraction, he thought out loud. Tell you what, I'll give Jason a call and arrange it, but I have to leave in the morning. Can you be ready by then? She jumped up. Yes, it won't take me long to pack. She frowned. Oh, I almost forgot. Maddie insists everyone come to dinner tonight at the inn. She said she has an announcement to make. Well, we can go, but we'll have to make an early night of it if you and 3 kids are going to be ready to go in the morning. I'll call the airlines and see if I can still get you on my flight. He smiled. First, though, is there any reason you want to keep this pregnancy a secret? No. Why? Let's tell the girls. She smiled and nodded. Girls, he called loudly. Lily, Daisy, come downstairs. Lizzie moved off of her husband's lap and sat on the sofa. It took only a few moments for the girls to dash down the stairs. Is everything okay down here? Lily asked, eyeing her mother, who'd obviously been crying. Keegan smiled. Everything is great, but I'm going to need your cooperation. Listen, girls, you know I have to go out of town for a little while. Your mama's worried and upset about it. And why? You go off on your secret missions all the time. Why is she worried? Where are you going? Lily asked, quickly, the worry evident in her eyes. I have to fly to California and then from there to Kazakhstan. It's a bigger operation than usual. And to ease your mom's worries, she's decided she would like to come as far as California to visit the Kinos. She would like for you two and Gabriel to come along with her, and I would like that too, because I'm going to need you to take care of her while I'm gone. Take care of her? Why does Mom need taken care of? Daisy asked. He smiled at Lizzie, and Lizzie turned to the girls. He's worried about me because I just found out that we're going to have a baby. Squeals of delight filled the air as the 2 girls hugged each other and their mom. And when all the commotion died down, Keegan took a few minutes to fill them in on the rest of the story, where and why he was going and why their mom was so fearful. He procured their cooperation and went on with plans. So, Keegan said as he stood, first things first, I'll make the plane reservations and I'll call Jason. You 3 get ready to go eat at Maddie's and pack what you can now. After dinner, you can finish packing and make any other arrangements you'll need to make. We're on it, the girls said in unison as they ran back up the steps. Lizzie turned to follow them, but was stopped when Keegan grabbed her by the arm and pulled her to him. Hey, he said softly. She smiled up at him. Everything is going to be okay, he said. She nodded, offering him a smile. Thank you, Keegan. Thank you, Lizzie, for all the love you so freely give. He cupped her face and kissed her tenderly, and for wanting to have my baby. He kissed her once more and then shoved her up the steps. New scene. As forks clicked against plates and ice tinkled in glasses, Maddie Lewis looked around the giant table at the people she loved. Her granddaughter Lisa and the man she married, Jazz Stewart, and their 4 children, Lena, Charlie, Matthew, and little Erilyn. And then there was Lisa's business partner, Jody Apple, Jody's husband, John, and their son, Jacob, who just turned 18 at the end of February, Maddie loved the apples like her own family since they actually lived right there in the inn with her. And then there was Lizzie and Keegan Tanner and 3 of their 6 children. They had the one boy, Gabriel, and 5 girls from Lizzie's first husband. Keegan loved those girls like his own, but never adopted them. They, the girls, and Lizzie and Keegan had made the decision to keep their real father's name in order to honor him. Bradley Anderson had died in Iraq. Cowboys, innkeepers, singers, martial artists, special agents, athletes, such a diverse group of people, and also very talented in their own way, and beautiful. So much beauty. She smiled at each one, catching their eye and moving on. So, Grams, Lisa said, tell us, what's the big news you wanted to share? We're sitting on pins and needles. Well, dear, it's not really news. Rather, it's an announcement. I've decided to do something, and I would like to be backed up in this project by everyone here, and especially by you. Anything you want, Grams, you know I'll help you, Lisa said. Grams frowned. Well, maybe not, when you hear what it is I want to do. Lisa smiled. Really? Wow, it must be awful. Are you running away to be married to that handsome Mr. Goodman that came to the inn this past Christmas? Maddie laughed. Oh, dear me? No, I would never love another man since your grandfather. Chaz, Keegan, and John all smiled. The woman was so sweet and so cute, and they were all a little in love with her. Well, he sure liked you, Jody put in. Nonsense. He was simply being polite. Oh, polite, is that what they call it? Lisa asked. Now, really, Lisa, this is very serious, and I'm afraid to admit that I called everyone here to help me because I was afraid of your reaction. The table grew quiet as they realized Maddie wasn't joking around. Something was troubling her. She put her fork down. You all have children. Look at them. Are they precious to you? She smiled as the adults at the table all nodded their heads, and a few and a few mumbled words like absolutely, they are everything, and so on. Mr. Lewis and I, it took us a very long time to conceive a child, and when we finally did, we were ecstatic. The day we found out we were going to have a baby, he started building. He built a rocker, a crib, a high chair, mobiles, and toys, and I painted the little room down the hall pink and blue because back then you didn't know what you were going to have until you had it. I made curtains for the room and bought all kinds of stuffed animals, and then little Louise came into the world. She stopped to glance up at Lisa, who had gone quite still. It was an old-fashioned name, I know. We named her for my sweet baby sister who died when she was only 5. I was 13, and to console my mother, I told her that I would name my first baby after Louise. Maddie's eyes took on a dreamy look. Louise was so tiny. She had my blonde hair and her father's eyes, and once her hair finally started growing, I couldn't buy enough pink ribbons. I loved her more than I thought I could love anything. I guess I spoiled her. I know her father did. We only wanted the best for her. Once Louise got closer to her teenage years, she changed from being my sweet, if petulant, little child to a horror. I can't tell you how many tears I cried over that girl. Chaz eyed his wife, knowing she'd been terribly hurt by her mother, Louise Lewis. As most of you know, Louise got pregnant with Lisa when she was 16 and she left home. I knew true misery then. I don't think Mr. Lewis ever got over it. I think he thought she would come back through that door any day, saying she realized how much she loved us. But she never did. I don't know where we went wrong. You didn't do anything wrong, Grams, Lisa said sharply. She was just a bad apple. She was selfish and greedy, and she went down the dark side and liked it too much. I'm sorry if my words hurt you, but I don't want you berating yourself over Lou. Maddie smiled sweetly at her. Lisa, I appreciate you wanting to protect me. I'm telling you all this little story to help you understand what I'm about to say. I want to go to California to see my daughter. Lisa gasped. I want to find some closure there. I'm not getting any younger, and for the longest time, I didn't know where Louise was. what she was doing. Then Lisa left her and came to find me, and I did know, and I kept hoping that one day Louise would follow. I realize, though, that it's not going to happen, and I don't want to go to my grave asking myself why I never made the effort to go to her. Grams, are you ill? Lisa asked quickly. Nonsense. I'm as healthy as a horse. Still, people don't live forever. Now, she said crisply, since the inn is closed for the month of March and since spring break is coming up, I thought it would be nice to spend this coming week in California. Now, I know it's late notice, but I'm positive I can make this happen. I don't, Lisa started. I think that would be great, Jody interrupted. I could come with you. I can visit my family and see some of my old friends, and besides the Kinos, John has like a million friends out there that he'd probably like to visit. John laughed. Well, not that many, but I can dig a trip to California. What about you, son? I don't see a problem, Jacob answered, even though Becky is not going to be happy. She'll just have to understand, he said in an effort to live up to his new 18-year-old mature status. He and his girlfriend were having problems anyway. It would be good to be away from her for a while. Lena Stewart rolled her eyes and wrinkled her adorable nose at Jacob's comment. Lisa, Chaz said, rubbing his hand over her shoulder. This is a hard thing for you, I know. A hard thing for both you and Maddie. What do you say? Lisa looked from face to face and sighed. How could I deny Maddie anything she asks of me? She's been so good to me, and she was good to my mother, and I won't be the cause of any more pain for her. But I have to say, Grams, I think this is going to cause you some tears. Tears? What's a little salt water between family? The group laughed. How about you, Milena? Lisa asked her 17-year-old daughter. Oh, I think this is going to be awesome, she answered, glancing quickly at Jacob. Chaz caught the fleeting look and eyed Jake, his brow creasing. I'm all in, he said pointedly. I'm sure Tyson and Dad can handle things at the ranch until we get back. Keegan and Lizzie smiled at each other. What about you, Keeg? You want to come? John asked. Yeah, Dad, Gabriel piped up. Are we going? Well, now this is actually quite a coincidence. I was going to ask tonight, John, if you and Jody could see fit to join Lizzie in California. What? Lizzie asked. He smiled at her. I wasn't going to tell you until I had an answer from them. He turned to the rest of the group to explain. Lizzie and I had already decided to take a trip to California. You guys know all about the problem with Jeffy Keno's life being threatened. Well, Jason has located the operation that's trying to kill her, and he wants it taken out. I have to fly to California in the morning, and then I leave from there for Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan, John muttered. Geez, Keeg, how big of an operation are we talking? Keegan glanced quickly at Lizzie. We can discuss all the details later. The deal is, I have to leave in the morning, and Lizzie has been feeling a little clingy lately, and so she and the kids are coming with me as far as California. They're going to stay with the Kinos while I'm gone, and I was hoping to get you guys to come along to keep an eye on her so that I could concentrate on my job. Why are you feeling clingy, Lizzie? Jody asked sympathetically. Lizzie took a deep breath and smiled up at Keegan. 'Cause she's going to have a baby, Lily and Daisy said at once. Oh, my goodness, Maddie cried. How wonderful. How do you feel about this? Lisa asked. Oh, I'm happy about having the baby, but she trailed off as she fought the tears that welled in her eyes. Jody reached for her hand and squeezed it. Oh, sweetie, I get it. You're pregnant, and Keegan is going into the field, a very dangerous field. Lizzie nodded. I'm so afraid it's going to happen again. Keegan glanced at Gabriel, whose face was solemn and contemplative. Dad, Gabe said softly, how bad is it? Well, it's not as bad as they make it sound. It's nothing like what John and I have faced before. John eyed Keegan but kept his mouth shut. Look, everyone, Keegan said adamantly. My job is sometimes dangerous. You all know that. I promise to be careful, but you also all know that sometimes a man's got to do what a man's got to do. And I can't stay home and send another in my place. I have the most experience. Along with me, John added. Right. But last time I checked, you weren't working for Ameritech. Still, I was depending on you to keep an eye on my family while I'm gone. Oh, you got that, Keeg, John swore. Keegan nodded. Okay, then. So it looks like the whole Pine Forest clan is heading to California. When will the rest of you be shipping out? Well, it'll take me a few days to get things arranged, Lisa said. Maddie nodded. A few days would be perfect. John, Jake, and I can be ready to fly out sometime tomorrow, Jody said. Well, I just spoke with Jason. The Keno family's all staying together at the main house, which means they're occupying 6 of the 12 bedrooms, Keegan said. Well, the girls and I can share a room, Lizzie offered. Good, I was going to suggest that. And Gabe, you can stay in the same room with JoJo and Logan and Eric if you'd like, or you and Jacob can share a room. Gabe and I can camp out together with the other guys, Jake said. That would be great. With John and Jody in another room, that means there are still 4 rooms left for anyone else who decides to stay at the Keno's, Keegan said. I think our family and Graham's will get a hotel room, if you don't mind, Lisa nodded. Don't mind at all, Keegan replied. I know you have your own family drama you'll need to work out. Chaz nodded. Sounds like a great time, he joked. Well, we'll all be together with people we love and care about. That's what counts, John added. But you will come and visit with Keno's, won't you, Lizzie asked Lisa. Of course, we'll come over and show our support. Well, I suggest we call it a night as we all have preparations to make, Keegan urged. Oh, no, Maddie cried. You can't go without dessert. Oh, of course not, Keegan replied. Don't know what I was thinking. New scene. Jay Sanders couldn't keep the tears from coming. I can't stand it any longer. Please, just let me out. I would be happy to. The eerily calm, disembodied voice seemed to come to Jay from everywhere at once. All you have to do, Jay, Jason continued, is tell me what I want to know. Silence. Jay, do you know how long you've been in there? No, forever. Maybe 10, 15 hours. I don't know. I gotta get out of here. 4 hours, Jay. That's all. Just 4 hours. I know it seems like a lot longer. It's called sensory deprivation, Jay. I can't stand the darkness. I'm going crazy. All you have to do is talk to me, Jay. Jay walked the perimeter of the room, his hand running along the circular wall, the never-ending circular wall. He couldn't see anything, not even his own hand in front of his face. It bothered him that as he circled the room, he never came to a door. It bothered him the way the darkness seemed to press in against him from all sides, like it was something tangible that could grab him and hold him until he simply ceased to exist. If you feel like this after 4 hours, Jay, think how you'll feel after 4 days or 4 weeks. I'm a patient man, Jay. Jay's body began to tremble at the thought. Even 4 more hours made him cringe. 4 weeks? Let me out, Jay screamed, pounding his fists against the wall. Jason waited for him to calm down. You're overstressed. Go back to the bed, Jay. Lie down and put on the headphones. There's not a bed in here. I walked all over this room. Are you sure? Jay drew several breaths. Where's the bed? I can't see it. Turn slightly to your left. Stop. That's it. Walk forward 8 steps. Good. Reach out. Jay touched the edge of the bed and collapsed on it and buried his face in the pillow. The headphones are on the rail to your right. That's right. Go ahead and put them on. You will hear some pleasant sounds, the ocean, rain, chimes. It will help you forget where you are. But good night, Jay, or is it day? Jason turned off the speaker and turned to Joey and Jeff. He won't last much longer. I have to say that your means of torture is much nicer and much neater than what I went through at the hands of terrorists way back when, Jeff stated. Jason grinned. You think? Jay Sanders is not exactly a brilliant specimen, so it's working much faster than it would for someone like you. The lack of sound and lack of light is maddening for some who've never turned inward. And now the pleasant tones on the headphones, combined with the brain sync technology and the subliminal messages. He'll be talking in a few hours. Why do you even need to hear what he has to say? Joey asked. The cocktail you shot into Ormonde was good enough to have him cough up all the details. Yep, and we're assembling the team, but why not get as much information as possible? Joey nodded. He and Keegan Tanner would be leading a team into the stronghold of Russian billionaire Eklon Laxall. The rogue military operation, located on the southern tip of the Mangostal province in Kazakhstan and was merely overlooked by the Kazakhstani government, consisted mainly of mercenaries and criminals. Of course, Jason realized that if they don't cut off the head of the snake, it will strike again, so they had plans to take care of Mr. Laxall, too. Those plans included a few high-tech surveillance gadgets and a couple of Ameritech's best hackers, which included his daughter's boyfriend, Jensen Deal. The team will be complete by this afternoon when Keegan arrives, Joey said. Jason nodded. As you know, we'll be coordinating with the SEAL team. Preliminary briefing will be in the morning. I'll look forward to it, Joey said. Jason eyed the two men, Joseph Adams and Jefferson Davis. Joey and Jeff, two of the best. Joey was slated to take over Ameritech, and Jeff's sharpshooting skills were unsurpassed, yet neither had been in the military. They'd been on some fairly large raids, but this was by far the largest operation they'd ever attempted. When Jeff was only 25, he'd been in on the raid of a child trafficking ring and had been captured and tortured by Islamic terrorists. It was Keegan Tanner who'd saved him. Special Agent Keegan Tanner at the time. Since then, Jeff had grown in skill and maturity. Both he and Joey were confident, but not cocky, and they took the job deadly serious. Joey's baby sister was out there somewhere waiting for him to succeed so she could come home. Still, Jason was just as concerned about his men as he was about Jeffy. He blew out a breath. Go home, you two. Make love to your wives and kiss your kids. That's the end of that scene. New scene. Brianna Adams lay snuggled against her husband's chest. Suddenly, he flipped her over and kissed her hard. I will never be able to get enough of you, he growled. Never. Lord knows it's not from lack of trying. Bree sighed. Well, keep trying, honey. I have no complaints. I love you, Bree. She smiled. I know. I love you too, Rick. Everything about you. He bent and kissed her softly, and she gave a soft moan and then a ladylike curse when her cell phone rang. It took a second for Ricky to let her up, but he finally did, though begrudgingly. She glanced at the phone before she answered. Hi, Caroline, Bree said, then mouthed to Ricky, Caroline Smith. Hi, Bree. How are you? I'm okay. Toby told me Jeffy is okay and will be coming home in about a week. Yeah, that's what they tell me. It can't be too soon for me. Oh, sweetie, I'm sure you're fit to be tied. Bree smiled. It's nice to hear a good old Southern saying. Reminds me of my teenage years. Well, shut my mouth. If it cheers you up, I can really pour it on. I do declare I can get your feathers ruffled, and then you'll be sitting in tall cotton. Bree laughed. I wish Ricky had been listening. You sound so cute when you say that stuff. Where is he? Oh, he's lying right beside me. Oh. Oh. Oh, no. Did I interrupt you two? Don't worry about it. We have company coming, so we thought we'd get in some alone time now, 'cause who knows how things will go later. Well, then, I'll let you go. No, that's okay, really. We're, finished for the time being, she said, winking at Ricky. Besides, I hardly ever get to talk to you. Well, okay then. So, who's coming to visit? Anyone I know? Yes, as a matter of fact. It's Keegan and Lizzie and 3 of their kids. Really? That's strange. She didn't say a thing to me the other day when we talked. Well, it was last minute, so I heard the recent single she made with Keith Urban went straight to #1. Yeah, it did. She's awesome. Her voice is like an angel. It really is, and it was so nice for Toby to give her the opportunities he has. I mean, when Mr. Country Music shows up at your wedding and offers to make a record for you, how cool is that? Too bad she doesn't devote more time to it. Yeah, her pick of projects are few and far between, but I understand her wanting to stay home with the kids as much as possible. As a matter of fact, I've recently taken some time off to spend more time with my kids, and I'm thinking I won't be going back to work anytime soon. I hear you. So tell me, why did you call in the first place? I know it wasn't just to woo me with southern idioms. Well, actually, I called to see if you were thinking about attending the Big Bash next weekend there in Hollywood. The Big Bash? Guess I missed that one. It's supposed to be a celebration of the arts, Caroline went on. Actors, musicians, dancers, playwrights, poets, photographers, painters, writers. Only those who've won prestige through awards or through other forms of recognition are invited. That includes Tony winners, Oscar winners, and Grammy winners, which means Toby and you, Bree. You know, I think I remember my publicist talking to me about this a few weeks ago. I didn't pay much attention because of what's going on around here with Jeffy. I don't think I'm interested in a party that celebrates winning awards. It's like patting ourselves on the back, and it sounds silly to me. Yeah, to me too. But Toby's manager is insisting he needs to be there if he wants to get the funding for the children's music programs he wants to sponsor in the schools. The place is going to be crawling with philanthropists. Even the big guy who's throwing the bash is entertaining offers of humanitarian efforts in the arts. Well, who is he? He's some Russian dude, a multi-billionaire named Eklon Loxall. Eklon Loxall? Never heard of him. Ricky suddenly rolled over. Put it on speaker, Bree. Caroline, Ricky wants me to be put on speaker. Suddenly he's interested. Okay. Tell me what you know about this guy, Ricky said. Not much at all. He's a billionaire. He made most of his money in pharmaceuticals. Yeah, there's a surprise. Huh? Never mind, go on. He's sponsoring this big bash that Toby and Bree have been invited to. Caroline went on to tell him everything she just told Bree. Will he be there? Ricky asked. Yes, well, I mean, that is what's implied. When is this happening? Next Saturday. Why? Let me speak to Toby. Ricky, you're being rude, Bree complained. Oh, sorry, ladies. He blew out a breath and went on to explain. This guy you mentioned, this Eklon Loxall, he's the guy funding the attacks on Jeffy. Oh, my lord, Caroline said. Well, then we most certainly will not be going. No, I want you to go. I want us to go. I need to talk to Toby and Jason. I think I have an idea. They're here. They're here. No, I think I have an idea. They're here, Taylor hollered from somewhere downstairs. Ricky frowned. Listen, Caro, tell Toby I'll call him in an hour or so. Keegan and Lizzie just got here. Oh, great. Keep us in suspense, she joked. Yes, I'll tell him. Bye, you guys, and give Lizzie a big hug for us. Will do, Bree said as she rose, quickly gathering her clothes and ran into the bathroom. Ricky pulled on the jeans and T-shirt he'd tossed on the floor earlier. I'll meet you downstairs, mon amour. Mon amour? French accent. Mon amour? Can't do it. He called. Don't say anything smart about why I'm not dressed, Bree cautioned. Would I do that? Ricky said with a chuckle as he closed the bedroom door. From the top of the stairs, Ricky watched Taylor throw open the front door and go running out. Shelley and Eric came from the kitchen. Jojo, Logan, and young Eric came up from the lower level, ran past their grandparents, and ran out the door. Bella and Breeze also came from the kitchen area, each holding a fat baby girl in their arms. Sophia stood between them. Ricky skipped down the steps and looked outside. Keegan was helping Lizzie out of the Ameritech limo van that had picked them up at the airport. Taylor was standing beside the van, talking a mile a minute to Lily and Daisy. It was so reminiscent of Jeffy when she was that age that Ricky's heart lurched in his chest. Gabriel was busy trying to help the driver get the bags out of the van and smiled when Jojo, Logan, and young Eric each greeted him by patting him on the shoulder and shaking his hand. The boys grabbed up the bags and headed inside. Keegan and Lizzie came up the large expanse of front steps and were greeted by Eric and Shelley. It's so good to see you again, Shelley said as she kissed each of them on their cheeks. Eric extended his hand in a kind smile to Lizzie. Hello, Liz. He pressed her hand between both of his and looked into her eyes. Thank you for coming, he said. Blinking up at his face, she knew exactly what he was conveying. He was thanking her for allowing Keegan to help with the trouble that Jeffy was in. She nodded and offered a smile. It's nice to see you, Eric. Grandmaster Keno, Keegan said. Eric, good to see you, and thank you for your hospitality. Eric smiled. I believe the thanks goes to you and your family. Keegan nodded. You're welcome, but I'm just doing my job. Eric glanced past Keegan and his face lit up. My angels, he said. Both Lily and Daisy giggled. They and their older sisters had met this man when they'd been just toddlers, and it had been love at first sight. Hello, Grandmaster Keno, they said in unison. He held out his arms, and they both went into them for a giant hug, and they stepped back. I didn't think it was possible that you could be more beautiful than the last time I saw you. Beautiful ain't the word, Jojo muttered under his breath. Hot is more like it, young Eric conceded. Logan just smiled. Eric smiled at Gabriel. Young sir, he said solemnly. Smiling, Gabriel bowed. Since Gabriel had been 4 years old, he'd insisted that everyone should always bow to Grandmaster Keno because that showed the respect he deserved as Grand Master. Everyone agreed, but Gabe was the only one who never forgot. Eric bowed to the young man before he reached forward and shook the boy's hand. You are growing like a weed, Eric said to him. Gabe smiled. Yes, sir. Shelley kissed Gabriel's cheek. I thought the apples were coming with you, Eric said to Keegan. Well, they had to take a later flight, but they should be here in a couple of hours, Keegan answered. Shelley grabbed Lizzie's arm and led her inside. Come on, I'll help you get settled. Not so fast, Ricky said as he trotted down the stairs to the door. He reached out to give Keegan a hearty handshake. Keeg, so good to see you, man. They leaned forward and hugged briefly. Ricky then grabbed Lizzie and kissed both her cheeks. Where's Bree? Lizzie asked as she tucked a lock of her blonde hair behind her ear. Ricky offered a sly grin. I had to show her something, and I did, and she's now in the bathroom putting her clothes back on. Geez, Uncle Rick, Jojo complained. Ricky Keno, I knew you were going to do that. I'm going to get you back, Bree said from the top of the stairs. He grinned. I'll look forward to it. Lizzie smiled while Keegan and Shelley chuckled. Bree came down the steps and greeted everyone with hugs and kisses. Daisy and Lily still had a hard time treating one of their favorite movie stars like a regular person, but they tried very hard to be nonchalant. Their brother Gabriel had always had the same problem with Ricky. Mom, Lily, and Daisy said they would stay with me in Jeffy's room, Taylor said, as they all came inside. Yeah, and Gabe is going to stay with us, aren't you, Gabe? Young Eric said. Sure, Gabriel answered, smiling at the way the older boys had always so easily accepted him. Well, it looks like that's all settled, Shelley said, turning to Breeze and Bella, who stood in the foyer. The Tanners hadn't seen Breeze and Bella since the babies had been born, and it took another 10 minutes for everyone to greet Mark and Joey's wives, get Sophia to speak to them, and nuzzle the baby's cheeks a few times. Keegan watched his wife as she doted on each little baby girl, holding them against her breast and kissing their smooth cheeks, and when she handed the babies back to their prospective mothers, she had tears in her eyes. He took her by the elbow. Come on, sweetheart. Let's get you settled. I think you need some rest. Wiping her eyes, Lizzie agreed, and the Tanner family followed Shelley upstairs. New scene. During the short break, Jason glanced around the briefing room, eyeing each man. They were a good group, a tough group, and he had complete confidence that they would be able to pull off this very delicate mission, delicate because of the political implications should things go wrong. Obviously, the intel was key here. As long as their information was correct, rounding up this large group of mercenaries who worked for Locksaw should be a piece of cake. However, Jason had never been naive enough to believe that anything was a piece of cake. Joey and Keegan were going in as joint heads. This mission was being played as a military op, and Joey did not have military experience. Yet Keegan, having been a member of a special ops team in Afghanistan, had vast experience, along with his buddies Tristan, Braden, and Caleb, who now worked with Ameritech. Those 5, along with sharpshooter Jeff Davis and 14 more of Jason's elite, would be working in tandem with a group of SEALs who, when the mission is over, will claim that it never happened. Loxall's facilities will be destroyed, his weapon stash confiscated, his men dealt with, but Jason knew that they will not go down without a fight. Not because they have any loyalty to Loxall, but because either they won't want their payday to come to an end or they get off on violence. Jason glanced over to the side of the room where his brother Justin Lee sat, alongside Grandmaster Eric Keno and Ricky Keno and Mark Adams and John Apple. Ricky and Mark, though not working for Ameritech, had been paid consulting fees to help train Jason's elite. They, along with Grandmaster Keno, had been invited to this last briefing for 2 reasons. 1, as a show of respect, and 2, because it was their daughter/sister who was the pawn at the bottom of this whole thing. Brother Justin was present not only because he was part of the family, but because he was Ameritech's attorney. His firm had a team of attorneys working on the legalities of this particular operation. John Apple had been invited because he was an old friend who'd accompanied the Tanners from Georgia and had synchronistically been part of Keegan's Afghanistan team. Jason turned, cleared his throat, and the group of them immediately became silent. Now, once you've secured Loxall's facilities, you will move on to rendezvous with Cam and Jeffy and serve as an escort back to Incirlik Air Base in Turkey. Agent Sweet will be in touch to give us their route. He turned the meeting over to the Navy commander who would be working with them. The man was precise and succinct in his words. Jason watched Joey's face to make sure he understood all that was going down. When the commander finished, Jason glanced at his watch and rose. You have your assignment. Now go home. You have until 0400 hours to take care of any personal business. I will see you at the base. He turned to the side. Grandmaster Keno, any words from you? Eric stood and faced the men who would be key in returning his daughter to safety. Well, gratitude is such a simple word for what you're about to do. Your bravery and sacrifice is duly noted. Once my daughter is allowed to come into her full potential, there will be much less suffering in the world, and the world will have you to thank for helping that to happen. He stood silently a moment. I pray God will keep you all safe and bring you victory in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen, the men answered. Eric then slowly and reverently bowed to them. The men scrambled to their feet and returned the honor. God go with you, Eric said softly. New scene. Lizzie glanced at her watch. 9 p.m. The men would be home soon, and then she and Keegan would have only a few hours together before he had to leave. Her hands shook, and she clasped them tightly together to hold them still. And I would love to get some shopping done, Bree said as she stretched her toes out in front of her. Me too, Jody Apple agreed. What about you, Lizzie? You feel like diving into a couple new pairs of shoes? When Lizzie didn't answer, the whole group of women turned toward her. Shelley, Angel, Lori, Bree, Breeze, Bella, Mickey, and Jody. Lizzie, Shelley said softly. Lizzie blinked and focused in on the soft voice. I'm sorry. What did you say? Are you worried about Keegan? Mickey asked. Lizzie bit her lip to keep it from trembling. Well, I don't blame you, because I'm worried about Joey, Bree said. And I'm worried about Jeff, Mickey admitted, but I've been trying to have positive thoughts. Shelley reached out across the kitchen table where they'd been eating ice cream and talking a mile a minute for the past hour. She patted Lizzie's hand. You lost one husband over there, and now you're afraid you'll lose another. Is that it? She asked gently. Lizzie nodded slowly as she lost the battle and the tears fell over her cheek. Oh, sweetie, we understand, Bella said quickly, taking her other hand and squeezing it. Lizzie sniffed and pulled her hands free and used them to wipe at the tears. Here, Justin's wife Lori said, offering her a napkin. Shelley watched Lizzie as she dabbed at her eyes. There's more, isn't there? Shelley asked. What else is going on? Lizzie shrugged. You might as well tell them, Jody said. Lizzie looked around the table and she sighed. You're pregnant, Breeze blurted out. The statement brought on a fresh wave of tears, and through them Lizzie nodded, and the women all squealed with delight. 7 children, Lizzie. Oh, my goodness, Bree said. Lizzie laughed as she dabbed at her eyes. I know it's crazy, isn't it? I don't even know how it happened. Oh, you and I gotta have a long talk, Bree answered dryly, causing all the women to laugh. How did you guess so easily? Lizzie asked Breeze. Well, it didn't take a genius to figure that one out. Still, she said, looking around the table at everyone, I guess it takes one to know one. It took a moment before the information made its way home, and the entire place erupted again. Shame on you for not telling me, Bella chided her younger sister. Well, I just took a pregnancy test today. I thought I would tell Joey before I told anyone else, but I wanted to wait until he got back so he wouldn't be distracted. So you have to promise not to tell him. We wouldn't dare, Bree promised. Breeze took Lizzie's hand and squeezed it between her own. So, Liz, I guess I'm beginning to understand what you went through before and what you're going through now. Somehow, though, we have to trust and let go of our fears. I'm so trying, Lizzie said. In just a few days, the men will be home, Shelley said. Focus on that. And I'll focus on the fact that my daughter will be with them, home, safe and sound, after 16 months away. Let's do a prayer circle, Jody offered. Everyone joined hands. The women pulled their chairs closer and took each other's hands. Breathing deeply, Jody began. Father, we come to you. In the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. New scene. Logan backed away from the kitchen entrance and headed back out through the large glass dining room doors past the pool to the lower deck. I thought you were going to get that bag of chips, Jojo said, as Logan rejoined the group. Yeah, and where's the cookies for the girls, young Eric asked. Sorry, guys, Logan said. I got up there and the women were all crying and stuff, and I couldn't figure out a way to get past them because they're all at the kitchen table. Then, just when I thought I could interrupt, Miss Jody started praying, and I didn't want to mess it up. Who was crying? Daisy asked. Logan shrugged. Well, they were all a little weepy and stuff, but mostly it was your mom. Lily and Daisy looked at each other. Maybe we'd better go in and check on her, Lily said. Well, if your mom is upset and all the women are praying, it would be best to let it be, young Eric advised. I agree with Eric, Jake Apple said. Mom's been crying a lot because she's going to have another baby, Gabe offered. Yeah, and that's one of the things they were talking about. And one more thing, Logan said. What? Jojo asked. Aunt Breeze is pregnant too. Eric and Jojo looked at each other with a smile. Really? Yeah, that's what I heard. I mean, she said she didn't want to tell Uncle Joey yet because he has to concentrate on his mission. The older boys all nodded. Wow, Aunt Breeze is going to have another baby? That is so cool, Taylor said. She eyed Logan. Don't you think so? Sure, it's cool. Well, all the men are going to be back soon, young Eric said. Once that happens, our little party's going to be over and the men will have to get some sleep. We could get together again tomorrow night, Jake said. The Stewarts are coming into town too, and we can get Lena to come over. Jojo's head popped up. Lena's in town? She will be tomorrow. Her mom and great-grandmother are going to have a reunion with her grandmother. Oh, so she'll be out with them? Uh-uh. Only the adults. The kids are staying here. Jojo smiled. Cool. Let's plan a little pizza party for tomorrow night. Sounds good, Jacob agreed. So, Lily, Eric began with a smile. You want to go for a walk on the beach? Lily smiled at the handsome 17-year-old. Are you putting the moves on me, Eric Kino? He grinned at her. Not yet. I'm almost 2 years older than you, she reminded him. He shrugged. I like older women. Geez, Jake muttered while Jojo and Daisy laughed. Lily moved closer to Eric and placed her hand lightly on his shoulder. She had to admit the guy was totally hot. He looked a lot like his movie star father. It wasn't so much his younger age as the fact that she thought of him like a brother. She leaned close and put her lips against his ear. Why are you interested in older women? Is it that you would like me to relieve you of your virginity? She whispered. Eric's heart almost jumped through his chest. His mouth dropped open, and then he looked into her eyes and saw that she was teasing him. Thinking fast, he drew up straight and tall. I was thinking I could take care of that for you. She laughed. You guys know we can hear you, right? Jake said. And no offense, but Just let me say that if either of you follow through it wouldn't end well. How you figure? Eric asked. 'Cause I'd have to step in and kill you to defend Lily's honor, and her father would probably kill her. Logan and Jojo snorted at the idea of Jake defeating Eric in a battle, but Eric wasn't so quick to judge. He learned that the hard way after having had his head bashed in when he was 11 years old. Jacob Apple was trained by his own father, who'd been trained by young Eric's grandfather, and Jacob's father had also been special ops and had his own line of martial arts schools. Jake was not to be taken lightly. Still, this whole thing was simply a joke and not a reason to square off on anyone, and he conceded. You're right, Jake. It wouldn't end well, regardless of who won between the two of us. Still, Lily and Daisy are so hot. You can't blame a guy for at least trying. Jacob smiled at Eric's wisdom. You're right about that. Well, now that you guys have spilled out some of your overflowing testosterone, let me just set you straight on this, Lily said sharply. First, Jacob Apple, I don't need you or anyone else to defend my honor. I'll give, or have given, which one will remain undisclosed, away my virginity when I feel it's right to do so and no one else has a say in it. Daisy chuckled at the astonished looks on the boys' faces. She didn't dare let on that because their mother had gotten pregnant so young, they'd had the abstain thing drilled into them, and nor did she remind them that they, like the Kinos, were stalwart Christians. And second, my father is not the one who would go a little crazy. That would be either my mother or Rose, the twins said together as they burst into laughter. Well, I have to correct you, Lily, Jake said quickly. Your mom or Rose may be the most vocal, but thinking like a guy, I can say your father and maybe even your brother would be the hardest to come down on you. Gabe nodded because Jake spoke what he'd been thinking. Lily, Daisy, Gabe, come in and tell your father good night, Lizzie called from the door. Let's go, Jojo said, jumping up. The men are home. And that is the end of chapter 9.